Welcome to TV5 and Mana TV. You are watching Insight with Praveen Puram on a Saturday morning with one of our esteemed guests, Rowenas Services from Australia. Very good evening, Rowena. How are you?
I'm very good, Praveen. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
For your time. Yeah. So coming to today's program, we will be more touching on the LinkedIn. What is the impact of the LinkedIn on each and everyone? As we do many shows, which is very, very relevant to the Indo-American community and also the NRIs across the America. So I just thought I will bring this particular topic, which is very essential for all of us, how to build a LinkedIn profile, how to make some blogs, how to influence basically making our branding in social media. So Rowena, I just wanted to introduce you to the audience and then we will get straight into the topics. Sure. So Rowena is an author of Build a Body of Work. She's also an editor, writer, and communication specialist. She was a former founding editor of HR Matter magazine, a niche human resource publication that ran for 8 years. Rowena assists organizations and senior executives with their communication, branding, and content development initiatives. Over the last decade, she has been helping individuals refine their LinkedIn profile and digital presence. As a trainer and facilitator, she delivers workshops on effective communication and developing an impactful LinkedIn profile. She's also a founder and creative director of Digital Confluence, a boutique marketing and communication firm that provides business with bespoke solutions, including white label, content developments, social media development, management, and communication services. She's also a board member and director of member communications at International Association of Business Communicators, Canberra chapter. Additionally, she actively participates as a mentor for the Canberra Women in Business Mentor Program. Excellent profile, Rowena. Did I miss anything?
No, you've covered most of the important bits. Thank you very much.
First of all, I wanted to thank the sponsor, Bombay Lunch, for making this program. And I wanted to thank Randir for giving this opportunity. And let's get straight into the topic. So today's world, Rowena, I think after pandemic, even before pandemic, LinkedIn profile has been like a Bible for any of them to be recruited or any of your product to be marketed or any executives or authors. This has become a #1 platform to assess your complete stature, right? So how do you feel that any individual should be very thorough in their LinkedIn profile? What are the steps to get there?
Okay, thank you. That's a great question. I think there are quite a number of things that you can do with a LinkedIn profile, and it does seem quite exciting. Now, we've got millions of people on the platform, and so if you have not really been very big on social media, or you've maintained, a basic presence, sorry, coming onto a platform like this can feel a little overwhelming because there's so many moving parts and so many things to think about. And once you have a profile, then the question is, what next? I've got the profile, what should I do? What content do I need to create? Who should I connect to? So there's lots of questions. And I think what you need to do when you first get on a platform like this is just take a step back, actually, and have a think about what you want out of the platform. What are your goals and what are you trying to achieve? And that will help you in figuring out how to move ahead. So when I talk to people about building more visibility and building their profile on LinkedIn, I tend to focus on 3 aspects, which individually, they are very powerful, but together they are a powerful force. And the three aspects are: first, that you build a very strong and clear profile. Now, I know it sounds very obvious that you should build a strong and clear profile, but there are ways in which your profile can be confusing, or ways in which you can, you might have certain aspects clashing or misaligned with other aspects of your profile, or even a profile that is leaning in a particular way, but the content that you create is saying different things. So we don't take it for granted that whatever profile you create is going to be clear. Sometimes there can be confusion. So starting with having a very clear profile and making sure that you look through all of the various aspects of LinkedIn, all of the different features of the platform, so that you're utilizing it to the best that you can, so that you're doing everything possible to make sure that you have a strong profile. The second aspect is to build a relevant and purposeful network around you. So if you have a profile and you are thinking of creating content, obviously you need an audience. Now you can just go out there and create content for anyone, but if you do that, you might find that the content doesn't resonate. And that's because you have to be very mindful of who it is that you're creating the content for. And if you are creating it for a very specific audience, then that is the audience that's going to appreciate it, which means that the audience that does not appreciate it, it's fine. You don't need to, you're not targeting them. And so if they don't appreciate it, that's fine. But knowing who that audience is and making sure that they can see your content is part of the second aspect of building a relevant network. And the third and final one is building a relevant body of work, or that's what I call your digital portfolio. So having something that can showcase your expertise. So these are the three aspects I look at when I'm helping people to develop more visibility and professional presence.
Absolutely. So I think you have listed all the three aspects of it. But before that, I just wanted to touch your journey. What made you come into this profession? And how did you start thinking that LinkedIn would be a number one media for everyone to, profile their body of work and maintain, and how the content need to resonate and who will be their network? So what is your journey basically?
On LinkedIn, like why did I choose LinkedIn?
Yes.
Well, when I first started on LinkedIn, which was back in 2007, so I've been on the platform for quite some time. In the early days, it was very rudimentary, and it was more of a place that you come to look for your next job. And I had already been on a couple of social media platforms at that point, and I was just curious, and I liked the idea of having a B2B platform. So I got on and I just explored. So it was very much exploratory, curiosity, and just going with the flow. And so I didn't really use it in any big way, like how I'm using it now. In the early days, it was just another platform alongside whatever else I was working on. But I did notice that over time, there were significant shifts in how the platform was operating and in how it was providing services to people. And that's when it started to get exciting, because once you started to have more and more people come on the platform and you have more of a community, then it goes beyond just being a place to look for your next job. It's a place where you can hang out. Professionals can hang out, and you can find other people who are doing work similar to you. You can find clients and so on and so forth. So that's been pretty interesting over the last decade or so.
Absolutely. I think you have nailed down. So then my next question is, you have also been an author and also a blogger. For example, if you see, you have written a book called Body of Work. So what exactly you are trying to, express in your book?
Okay, well, one of the services I do, so I'm working in marketing and communication, and one of the things that I do besides supporting businesses, is supporting individuals. And my goal is to help people realize that there are things that they can do for themselves to build their visibility. Because often we're busy with the lives we lead, with our jobs. And if this is not something that we're very comfortable with, promoting ourselves, selling ourselves, then I'm hoping that the work that I've created can show that there is a way to do this without feeling, cheap, or that you are selling something. Because ultimately, we have to be the best marketers of ourselves. We have a personal brand. All of us do. Whether we realize it or not, we have a brand. And it is our job to make sure that we put that brand forward, and that brand supports us as we move through life in the various roles we undertake, in the businesses that we build. And we have an opportunity to craft that story for ourselves. And that's what this book is about. It's helping people. It's a very practical, it's done as a case study. So meant to help somebody who is very much interested, buys into the idea that they should take part and build their branding. And it's done as a case study so that you can kind of walk alongside the case study and start doing some of the activities that I'm talking about step by step. So you don't have to figure everything out. You kind of just I walk you through what you need to do, and you go about doing it.
Excellent, Rowena. So why don't you give some tips how to optimize your LinkedIn profile? Basically,
okay.
This I wanted to be as a simple mantra to all of my audience, especially the Indo-Americans and NRIs who are living here. They are busy in their day-to-day life, but I want you to give few tips. Let them go back to their LinkedIn and make little bit modification. How can you optimize?
Are they working in corporate, or are they business owners, or?
Basically, most of them are into IT, corporate world, but
okay.
Absolutely there are business owners as well. So give tips,
Okay.
maybe generic, which reflects their businesses and also personal branding.
Well, there's quite a few areas that you can look at. I would start with making sure that the main aspects of your LinkedIn are covered. So things like, for example, your profile headshot, that everybody needs to have something like that. I know there are concerns out there about, deep fakes and having too many photos on social media, but I think there's definitely value in having a profile headshot for your LinkedIn profile, because this is a B2B platform, and people, it resonates more. Your profile resonates more if they know who it is that is talking, who it is that is posting. So just having one photo, and it's, you can just have one photo across all of your social media. You don't necessarily have to have many photos if that is a concern. The second thing is every profile has a background image that sits behind your profile photo. And that's a very powerful and good creative space, because we are visual people, right? People are visual, and we like to look at things, pictures and videos. And so the profile headshot and the area behind the profile headshot are very good for pulling the eye in and getting people curious about you. So making sure that you have something in that background area, which is by default just a gray rectangle. Having an image there at minimum will be good. But another way to extend that area is to think about what you're going to put in your headline. So your headline is the little area that sits below your name. And some people might put their job title, and some people might put a short phrase. So your headline, I'll come to your headline, but think about what goes in your headline, what might go in your about section, and see how you can have an image there that incorporates a message as well. So some text, that would be a good way of using that space. So talking about the headline, as I said, some people tend to just default to your job title, because that's, we tend to see ourselves in those sort of boxes. But what you can do is kind of think about who you are in terms of you're more than your role, and you've done so many roles over the years. And if you kind of take a big picture view, kind of like a helicopter, and look at your journey, you might come to the conclusion that, hey, I've been in the nonprofit space for 20 years, or I have worked in 3 or 4 jobs, but I tend to focus on these areas. So we need to connect the dots for people to understand who we are. yes, they have the profile and they have the resume and they can go through everything themselves and they can come to that conclusion. But let's face it, everybody's busy and nobody's got the time to look through your profile completely. They're just going to do keyword searches. They're going to scan. They're going to see things that interest them on your profile, and then they're going to move to your activities and they're going to look at the kind of content you post. So nobody is going to get the full picture. So it is on us to say, how can I help my reader understand who I am? Because I don't want them to also be confused. So for example, if you're in the IT space, but let's just say that you're somebody that is very political. So you talk a lot about political issues, which can be, can be dangerous. It just kind of detracts and you can be polarizing. But if you do that, then if people don't, if what you're saying doesn't resonate with people, then they kind of switch off, or they also can, miscommunication and misinterpretation can also happen, right? And that can create it can create issues for first impression, especially if this person is somebody that you're thinking might be hiring you, or you're thinking, you might want to get into a project. So there are many ways in which things can go wrong. So we need to think about all the ways that we can make sure that people have the clarity about who we are. So if we do a couple of different things, like, we have a board role, we have a business, we have two businesses, and they're two different businesses, it is possible that people get the wrong end of things. And so it's very important we think about that as we're creating our profile, as we're creating our websites for the different businesses, and making sure that everything is aligned and sits properly. So thinking about that in your headline, that's really an opportunity for you to tell a story, a short phrase, making sure you insert some keywords. So think big picture there rather than just limiting yourself to your role. Those are some of the things I'd like to share.
I think that's definitely the headline. As I hear from you, the headline is very important. The picture is very important. The background is very important. But I feel that definitely everyone will have multitasking, right? Multi-companies are something. Mm-hmm. So that is when I hear from you that the perspective is driven when you see the headline or when you see multiple tasks doing. So how do we make that very smooth and say the people our story if you have multiple companies?
Yeah, doing multiple things. Okay. So, well, mm-hmm. I can use myself, I guess, as an example, because I do a couple of things. So I have a legal background, but I focus on marketing and communication. I also have a show that I do on building influence. I've written a book. So there's quite a few things, but the running theme that I have on my profile is that I help people build influence and visibility. So that's the thing that I want people to know about me. If you have a couple of businesses, I would say, think about different platforms for different things. It can't be that every business will work on LinkedIn. So some businesses, might be more suitable for platforms like Instagram or YouTube, depending on what you do. And so kind of having maybe different platforms for different businesses might be helpful, because if you try and create or support both businesses on the one platform with one profile, that may be hard. If you have two company pages for the two separate businesses, then that is useful. And you could be the thing that ties the two businesses together. The way to do it, I guess, is when you have multiple things, think about the audience and think about how you can align the different things that you do. And don't feel afraid about limiting what they see. So let's just say you run 5 businesses, but you're trying to build business 1, for example, or business A. Feel free to just talk a lot about business A and not necessarily mention the other businesses. You're not, there's no set way to do this, so you can kind of shine the light where you see fit and what works for you, and bearing in mind that this is a platform and it's in a way sort of like a living document. So as things change, maybe a year from now, and that business A is doing really well, you can kind of, let that carry on, and you can shine a light on the second business. or you can shine a light on 2 business at a time and not necessarily all 5. So knowing that there is that flexibility gives you some options as to what you want to do.
Absolutely. I think got a point on what you're trying to say. Focus on what you are doing first and then shift the light onto the other one.
Yeah. Yes.
So when you also said that when you are posting some posts, for example, you are putting something political, right? The reviewers are people who are reviewing your profile might think that your personality, and that may be a challenge whenever someone is hiring you. So typically in the LinkedIn's, when you are upgrading your skills, when you are upgrading your accomplishments, or when you are upgrading your certifications, they are straightforward. But when you are posting something, for example, you met a politician and you put on your LinkedIn, so that adds value, or it is a negative impact on the profile?
Well, yes, that's a good question. What you do and who you meet and what you talk about, it really depends on what it is that you're trying to achieve. So for example, myself, I want to be known in terms of marketing and communication. So I don't talk about politics on LinkedIn at all. One, it's not my area. Number 2, I have no expertise. I have no interest. And I don't want to confuse my audience, because I know who my audience is, and I know what I want them to know me for. And I also do a couple of things, like I mentor women. So I already have a few areas that I touch on, and I just want to keep it to those areas. Once you start talking about too many things, again, as I say, people come to your profile, they're not going through it from top to toe. They're just scanning and seeing a couple of things that interest them. And so based on that, they'll come to a conclusion about you, rightly or wrongly. And so you want to just make it as easy as possible for them not to get confused. And of course, there will be things that you feel strongly about, then you can come out and say, but be prepared when you say things, that you feel strongly about, that there will be people who agree and there will be people who won't. I mean, we're talking about a platform of millions here. There are trolls, there are people with strong opinions, you can get shut down too. So lots of things happen on these platforms.
Especially, Ravena, when you are into media and all those kinds of stuff, it's confusing. For example, when you take about me, I do this for helping people, but my profession is into IT. So always people have confusion. So I try my level to limits posts on LinkedIn, which is really useful. Sometimes I get, sometimes we should be bold enough to tell what you do. How does it matter? So there is a lot of confusion in the social media. Sometimes people make assumption about you, perception about you. So it is very, very difficult. So when you are more in the limelight, right?
Yes.
Thank you for that. And another question is, how does LinkedIn help professionals stay updated and industry trends, news, and relevant content?
There's a couple of ways that you can do that. One of that is to follow hashtags. So if you're in IT and let's say, for example, cloud security or, I don't know, data analysis, for example, you could follow particular hashtags. And when you follow these hashtags, what happens is when you type in your search bar, the hashtag, then a whole bunch of things can be visible, from content to people to companies. So that's the good thing about the search function, is that with the search function, you will pull up different categories of information as suits you. So when you follow a hashtag, you not only find up-to-date news, you might find the companies that are in that space, you'll find the people that are in that space. So it's very useful, especially if you're new in that area, or you've changed companies and you just want to see what is happening. Now, I won't say that you'll find everything, because there's so much going on, and IT is such a big space, but you'll find the things that people are talking about often. So that's one way to stay up to date, is to follow a hashtag. And there are well-known hashtags. When you follow a hashtag, it will show how many followers, how much search history there is. So certain hashtags will be not as popular, and you can go and look and see what are the different hashtags and which ones are popular and follow those. Another thing you can do is follow key companies in that space and thought leaders and subject matter experts. And of course, there are a whole bunch of newsletters out there now. A lot of people and companies are producing newsletters on a regular basis, LinkedIn included. And so these can be good sources of information. LinkedIn itself is, there's a lot of news being created as well within LinkedIn. So it's creating a situation where people don't need to go outside. You can stay on the platform and get everything that you need. And that can be useful for you to know what people are talking about, what is trending, and what is making the news at the time. And I think another way to stay up to date with industry trends and relevant content is not just to think about consuming the content, but being part of the conversation. Okay, especially if you want to be known for a particular subject matter, or you want people to know your expertise in an area. To do that, to be part of the conversation, you've also got to lead. And to lead means it could be as simple as leading a discussion, asking pertinent questions. You don't necessarily have to have the answers all the time. Just asking the questions could be good, and sharing useful resources. So these are some of the ways that you can begin to surface information and people in your space and on topics that are of interest to you.
Excellent. So you have touched one interesting topic, that is hashtags, right?
Yeah.
So tell us few tips. One is how to select a hashtag. And second one, what is the life cycle of a hashtag when I create a new? How do I keep...
When you create
I
it.
create a hashtag saying that Praveen Puram and then people follow me?
Yeah, I've seen people do that, but usually I think it depends on the individual, what they want to do. And also, I think if you create hashtags around yourself, you must be a regular content creator then as well, on a very regular basis. If you're just following hashtags because you want to stay up to date on things, then you look for the well-known hashtags. So you can look on LinkedIn, and you can also use Google Alerts to find out about the topic, and you can also find out what are the trending hashtags on Google and on LinkedIn as well. So kind of cross-reference a couple of different ways to find out what's trending. In each person's space, there will be relevant hashtags. So in my space, things like marketing, communication, internal communication, corporate communications, these are some of the hashtags. They would be relatively short keywords, 1 or 2 words. I know that people also have hashtags where they have little short phrases, but the tendency is to stick with short keywords that are subject matter related.
Excellent. So another simple question. For example, I wanted to do a post on LinkedIn, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you make your post more professional and expand it to more people? So in a sense, I'm asking, do you tag LinkedIn hashtags and people in that post so that it will be visible to everyone, or what are the tips?
Oh, okay. When you write a post, well, first thing you have to start with is, what am I doing here? What am I writing? Because often you see people, they post things on a whole range of issues. Sometimes they may just be wanting to be visible. Like, I'm just talking for the purposes of talking. Nothing wrong with that too, but you have to ask yourself, what is it I'm posting? Why am I posting this? Who is this meant for? And what do I want them to do? Or what do I want them to think when I'm creating this post? Those are the questions that you need to ask, and that will guide you as to what you're doing. So for example, when I write a post, the tendency is to think about how I can assist people. Okay, in my line of work, and what I want to do is to be able to support people and to help people understand that writing content is not that hard, but it's not super easy either. But you have to have a plan. You can't just come in there and just go with the flow. You have to have a bit of a plan. There has to be a bit of structure, but it is completely achievable. So when I write the content, I have in mind my audience. And the way to think about it is, there might be multiple levels of your audience. So for example, when I write a piece of content, sometimes I'm writing for the introductory audience. So people who are really at the start of the journey, haven't really written before, kind of scared, not sure where to start. So when you write content at that level, you kind of keep it brief. You try to eliminate jargon. You try to map out not just what to do, but why you need to do it this way, so they understand why you've taken that approach, and you make it simple. A second type of audience might be the intermediate, somebody who's already been posting content for a couple of years, already knows you don't have to tell them what to do. They're into a little bit more of a refined approach. So telling them to, map out their different audiences, telling them, okay, now how can we take things to the next level? That might be the approach. And then you've got the more sophisticated, mature audience where they know all of these things. So what are the kind of issues that they might be talking about? When they're talking, say, about cloud computing, they're not talking about introduction to cloud computing. They're not talking about, current trends or whatever. They're talking next level. So how can I be a thought leader in this space? How can I lead the conversation on a current issue? Where do I see things going? That kind of thing. So you see, depending on who the person is who's writing and where they sit in this, because the person who's writing may be an expert or may be sort of mid-level. And so you write to the best of your ability. And then you're writing for a particular audience. Is the audience a beginner, intermediate, or advanced? And so keeping that in mind as well is important, because you have multiple audiences. We don't just have one audience, right? And the basics, I guess, would be important. So things like making sure you run through a spell check, that you've, made sure all your grammar is good, that you have a call to action. So when you write a post, what do you want them to do? Maybe you want them to go read an article that you've written, or you've got a link that you want to share, a checklist for them to download. There should be something, or it could just be you end with a question. So you share about a news piece and you pose a question, and what you're doing there is you're trying to get engagement. So you might end with a question and say that, hopefully you have some thoughts on this, and maybe you can drop a comment. And usually you'll find if the thing resonates with people, you'll have a lot of comments, and that's a wonderful thing, because now you've got a conversation going.
Absolutely. So tell us, I think you have briefly told what all need to be taken care while posting. So my question to you is, when do you think the post is successful based on you see when you said that there are more interaction, the impressions will increase. So tell us a little bit the concept of impression. So when you have more impressions, your post is powerful, or how do you evaluate the post?
Yeah, I mean, there are people that look at things like impressions and clicks and engagement. To me, I like to also keep it simple in terms of engagement. So I'm writing for individuals, I'm writing for people. To me, a post is successful when it has the views, because you're writing content for people and it's being read, so that's good. You don't always get engagement, but that doesn't necessarily mean the engagement doesn't exist. And that's a hard one, because sometimes you write and you don't have that engagement, but you might much later, some people will come to you and say, I saw this post you wrote, and I'm like, okay, but you never said anything. But you find that happens often, that people don't feel like they will come up to you and say things or comment publicly, but they might send you a message to say that they read that piece and they found that it was really useful. So you get different kinds of people out there. And so just looking at engagement or comments is not always reflective of the fact that people are consuming the content. Obviously, the best case scenario is you got a ton of impressions, ton of clicks, and a whole bunch of comments. But the other thing also is to think about playing the long game, that you're not just there to get a bunch of clicks. Ultimately, you're connecting with and engaging with other people. And that's the idea. You want to share ideas. You want your ideas to resonate. You want people to take action. And if that's happening, or that's what you want, that's not going to happen with one post. Often it just doesn't work that way. It's about shifting things one conversation at a time, and over a period of time, achieving what you're set out to achieve.
Absolutely. I think you have truly said that sometimes we always encounter that people say, hey, I've seen your post. but we don't see the view. So exactly, it
Yes.
is all tricky, the LinkedIn posts and all those kinds of stuff. So next thing is on the influencer, right? Social influencer. So what are the, I know that social influencer is not an easy task. So how do you see to become an influencer? What are your tips to become a social influencer in LinkedIn?
Well, I'm not even an influencer, so I wouldn't know. But I think the main thing is to think about what it is that you're trying to do and go back to your goals. So if the goal is you trying to support people through a particular area, then that's what it is. If you are selling services or products, then that's what it is. The goal shouldn't be just to have the influence for the sake of it. It's a byproduct of what it is that you're doing. If you happen to have the influence and the visibility, I see that as a byproduct. The main goal, at least for me, is supporting people in understanding how to use the platform, in understanding that they have a shot at creating content themselves. What is really powerful about social media is that prior to its existence, we only had the mainstream media. So you had to work really hard if you wanted to have something printed in the newspaper. You know, for many, it would have had to be writing in a letter to the editor. How would I get an article out there? It's not the easiest thing to do. But right now we have social media. So whether you have an Instagram account or YouTube channel or LinkedIn, you have an opportunity to publish your thoughts. And
Absolutely.
that is fantastic. You don't need to wait for anything. There's really nothing to hold you back. You can, anytime you want now, just go out there and publish your thoughts in a short 2-minute video or an article. So then the question is, what's holding you back? Why are you not doing it? Of course, we are in a very consumer-driven culture where it's all about reading and watching what other people are doing. Not as many people are creating content. Most people are on the other end receiving the content. So it's very powerful if you decide that you are going to create content for other people, as you yourself are doing.
Absolutely. Rowena, I think you have touched because the social network is powerful these days. Now, coming to the small businesses, everyone wants to connect with everyone and make the business out of it. In this context, if I were to ask you some questions, like, for example, how do I connect? For example, I wanted to do business with Rowena. Earlier, it was impossible to find Rowena, but today I can find in LinkedIn Rowena very easily. But how do I make her add myself? For example, I made you add, and we are today based on LinkedIn. We don't have any roots before that, right?
Yeah.
So what are your tips to attract the other person and get into my network and then start the conversation?
Okay. Yes, that's a great question. I would say start by investigating or just reading a little bit about that person that you want to connect with first. I think that's really important. Just having a sense of who is this person, what does this person do? What are they like on LinkedIn? What are they posting about? What do they care about? It doesn't need to take, days. It could be a short little review, but having some interest in the person is important, because the thing is, if you have no interest in the person, that will come across anyway.
Absolutely.
The other thing I would say is an absolute no is to start selling straight away. So often you get people who reach out to connect and they might send no message. They would just hit the invite to connect button with nothing or with the default message. And those things are kind of hit and miss, because if there's no message, especially now, in the early days, people might be a bit more lenient and they'll be like, okay, I'll accept the connection. But nowadays, I think given what is happening on platforms like LinkedIn, a lot of selling, people will naturally be reluctant to connect. They'll want to know, why are you reaching out to connect? Like, what is it that you want from me? So we want to make sure that we personalize our connection requests, give people a reason to connect, tell them why you're reaching out to them. I read your article. I thought it's, really powerful. That's completely in the space that I'm interested in. And I thought I just reach out and connect. Maybe we could have a coffee one day. You need to personalize the message. That's one. And two, absolutely no go to selling or pitching somebody in the first message. That happens very often. They have a whole bunch of things they want to sell you, and here's the link to book a call. I don't know you. What makes you think that I want that? And often people, because they're sending this out to so many people, they're not even checking to see if there's relevance in what they're selling. So selling IT services to somebody who's in marketing or communications has no need for that, or selling some business related services to somebody who's in the corporate world, who's not an entrepreneur. It doesn't make sense. So when you get messages like that, you immediately think to yourself, this person doesn't know me. They have spent no time to figure out who I am, and they're sending me this. This is just spamming me with rubbish. And so that has created a lot of distrust and reluctance for people to just simply accept connections. So that's what you want to avoid.
Absolutely. I think those are the right tips what you have given. You have to conversate with people, personalize your message, and then request what exactly you want. So that's a great information, Rowena. Coming to, we also see that you are a TEDx speaker. So what was the topic you have delivered on the TEDx? Why don't you tell the audience how to get there?
Oh, I did two TEDx sessions. I was invited twice. And the first one was on how to build influence and my journey on that. And the second one was on protecting your dream. And the idea that I wanted to convey there is that we all have dreams in terms of our careers or any other dream. And the problem with the dream is we have an idea. It's a very it's a vulnerable idea that we're interested in, that we excited about. But because it's a dream, there are things that hold us back, whatever that may be. Maybe we don't feel so confident about that dream, or we've had many setbacks along the way, so we've had to pick ourselves up over and over. And the idea that I want to convey is that we have to protect that dream, whatever that dream is, because the person that knows best about that dream is yourself. And if you don't protect that dream, then whoever you share that dream with, and again, it's still at the dream stage, it's not the full thing, you haven't really brought it out. And so if you're not very good at communicating and people misunderstand, and they may mean well, but they may say something, cutting or something that will disappoint you or discourage you, and that will impact you in being able to do the thing that you want to do. And so I really believe that it's important that when you have a dream, that you protect it and that you kind of shield it from other people until the dream is strong enough to stand on its own.
That's a good information. I think we all have to pursue our dreams, shield it, and then make it strong. Thank you for that. And the other question I would like to ask is, because today's social world, everyone are hiring bloggers, content writers, right?
Yep.
So most of the executives or the business owners, they wanted to hire for the lead generation. They wanted to blog and get attention to the right audience and then interact. So in this case, my two questions. Everyone will not have that leeway. For example, if I'm not a small business owner, how do I create some content? Do you have some tool tips? That is one thing. Second thing, how do I understand a person, he has real knowledge or someone has created a block to him? So how do I judge person before I accept?
Okay, the first question is, how do I, as a business, create content if perhaps you don't have the budget to go and hire people to create the content for you? Okay, if you don't have the budget, and you don't necessarily have to have a ton of expertise, but you have to have the baseline writing capabilities. You have to be able to communicate at a basic level, right? Because what you don't want is, if you don't have the communication skill, let's say and let's assume we're using English, the English language. Let's say your English is not very good. Create the content, but at least put it through some sort of editing process so that it comes out, because you're publishing it to the world. So even if you don't have the budget to go get content creators, at least ensure that the material that you create has hit a basic professional level. Because if it does not, you're going to do yourself a disservice. It's actually going to have a negative impact, not no impact, a negative impact. Because naturally people will look at the content, and the badly worded information, the typos, the grammar is going to have an impact on your business brand. Even if you're not, offering copywriting services, it is going to impact the brand. So it's very important to have some sort of editing function to review the material. At the basic level, I think if you're creating content for your business and you're a small business, start with the simplest things. You are here to solve a problem. Your business exists to provide a service, and you are working to solve that problem. What is that problem? And so you might want to have some content out there that highlights what that service is and how you do things and what is unique about the way in which you do it. And you can do that through a case study. So you can walk people through a case study, so you can share a story about a particular client. It can be a fictitious client. You don't have to mention the client's name, but you can tell a story of a client, talk about the issues that they were facing, set some context by sharing some background information about the client, what they're facing, what they're hoping to achieve, talk about the problem, then talk about the solution that's being offered and why you are offering that particular solution, how that solution relates to the problem. Connect the ideas and create that context so that the reader can understand. And one thing that sometimes happens is that when we're so deep in our space and our subject matter area, we think that everybody else is, but they're not. So remember, when we create content that is going to be published on our website or a blog or on social media, is that we're going to have all kinds of readers coming to our content. So if, say, for example, a medical or pharmaceutical, you want to explain jargon, you want to keep things easy for any kind of reader to understand, and you want to connect the dots that you already have connected in your mind, so that anyone who's reading the content can understand, okay, that's why they're doing this. So you want to be able to do that when you create the content, so that anybody reading it can find value. And the reason for that also is because sometimes people may know other people, and they'll see that content, and they may not have a need for your services, but now that they understand the issue, now that they understand the issue and they understand how you resolve the problem, it may give them an idea about, oh, I have a friend of mine and she was having this issue, and I'll tell them about you. So, content works for you 24/7. Once you've created it and you've done a good job with it, it can continue to support you throughout. So that's what I would do if I was a small business.
Excellent. So the other question is, how do you identify the right people? Because the blogs might be written by someone else. So how do you judge?
You check a couple of things. So you'll check the blog. You'll not look at just one piece of content. So you'll look at a couple of pieces of content and see if you can find the consistency and alignment. Then you'll check the other copy that's on the website, because sometimes the blog and the website are on the same platform, but then they might have different people writing for the website, and you'll pick things up. If it's not holistically done, then you will pick it up. And then you'll look at the social media, and you'll look at the social media of the leaders as well. And if you do look across all of these aspects, if you find everything is in alignment, then there's a good chance that everything will be good. But then you'll also see, the face-to-face interactions will also be useful if you get that opportunity.
Excellent. As I think we are getting to the end of the show, I would like to conclude with a couple of questions. And the one question is, how do you see the LinkedIn to be a great source for the youth today? What is your message to them?
I think you have for the youth, I think you have a wonderful opportunity to get in early, right at the start. So when I got in, I was already well through my career, but I still found value in it. If you have an opportunity like this, you should take full advantage of it, because what you have is an opportunity to showcase your ability, to showcase your experience, even however small that it is. You have a chance to create and curate right from the beginning. So be very mindful of the digital footprint you're creating, not just on LinkedIn, because often young people, especially if they're just out of college or just in their first job, they may or may not have a LinkedIn profile. They may or may not see the value in it, but they will have other social media profiles.
Absolutely.
And so that will be reviewed, and you want to make sure that you are mindful of your digital footprint. It is being looked at, and it's not in isolation.
Absolutely. So, Rowena, tell us what kind of domains you help others. Like, what kind of different services you give to the audience, so that my audience.
Okay. I do a couple of things for individuals. I help senior managers and mid-level managers, business owners with their LinkedIn profiles, with their company pages, in terms of coming up with a strategy for the content that they want to create, optimizing their profile, creating their LinkedIn pages, thinking about their content and how they want to position themselves so that people can understand what services they offer and how to connect and how to reach out to their marketplace. With my legal background, I also offer services to legal companies where they're offering practical guidance to businesses. So demystifying the law, making it simple for people to understand their obligations. And I provide a lot of services to business, B2B clients in terms of content writing. So helping them with blogs, ghostwriting articles, that sort of thing.
Excellent. Where can we find your work?
Digitalconfluence.info or rowenamoraes.com.
Excellent. Before closing, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to give a message to the entire community, irrespective of the age or businesses. What is your final message on the building a LinkedIn profile?
Start today. Don't feel like you need to wait till you've got everything all lined up and perfect. Start today, take it slow. Understand that this is, in a way, a sort of living document that you have the ability to control and change things, and you don't have to feel like everything has to be perfect in order for you to begin that journey, and that it is very possible for you to use this platform to develop the profile that you want people to notice you for.
Thank you. I think that's a great information what you have given to us today on a LinkedIn, and how do you present your body of work, and you give a lot of tips on posting and all those kinds of stuff, which will be very, very useful for everyone who is watching this episode. Again, thank you so much for being late on a weekend and giving us all the tips, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks so much, Praveen. It was lovely to be here. Thank you for that.
Thank you everyone for watching, and we will continue to learn every weekend with wonderful guests like Rowena, and upgrade ourselves. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekday to everyone.